Barrie could soon have more than 800 affordable housing units under construction at once. After a General Committee voted last week to reopen the city's development charge waiver program to a second round of applicants. The program waives development charges to encourage construction. It has grown from about $50 million to $80 million, with just under half of that granted so far. Several projects stalled near the finish line, so the second intake draws on the leftover funds with no new cost to the city. It also adds an affordable ownership stream, requiring at least 60% of units in those projects to sell at or below an affordable price. Deputy Mayor Robert Thomson, who brought the motion, said the change gives stalled projects another chance without losing the housing.
It's going to give people opportunity to get into the market where was never an opportunity, and we're going to get much needed units. So
I was actually surprised that there wasn't a larger uptick when you consider 80 million was available and just shy of half of that was actually granted.
The amendment was, the mover of the amendment was considering rental units at all or just purchase?
the original program in motion 25G 197 was, I believe it was 20% affordable, 5 stories, purpose-built rental. So that will continue. And then the only added to this go around is paragraph 3 with the affordable ownership of a minimum of 60%. So the bulk, or the ones in the first uptake were all rentals, I believe, purpose-built rentals. And then the ones that were very close to the finish line that hopefully reapply and fulfill their obligations and get it built will be rental. So I would say the bulk of the money that's being uptake is by purpose-built rentals.
Mayor Alex Nuttall called it a low-cost way to deliver affordable units compared to larger city-funded bills, and said he wants staff to study a smaller annual version of the program.
This strategy actually works. But I do at some point want our staff to take a look at how we would create an annual program for a much smaller amount of money. The reason that we're in this position is because that was never done. The reason we're in this position is because it was 1993 and then 2026. The years where you saw real affordable housing projects move forward in terms of size.
Also during the meeting, Council voted to create a $150 per semester transit pass for students at Barrie's Lakehead University STEM Hub, covering fall 2026, winter 2027, and summer 2027. Because the student union can't vote in a full U-Pass until a 2027 referendum, the interim pass is meant to build ridership in the meantime. Ward 1 Councillor Claire Ripma, who chairs the Town and Gown Committee, said Lakehead University and the Downtown BIA representative will be added to that committee.
Because there's a lot of crossover, and we're hoping very much that we will be able to develop a great relationship between the city and Lakehead students through town.
This appears to be a positive partnership between both to the city and Lakehead University, but question to staff, are there any additional opportunities in the future to expand collaboration with the university in the areas?
We have a real strong partnership with Georgian College already, with some of probably what you're talking about, from engagement exercises and educational exercises. We send staff there quite a bit to, promote the UPass, promote our service, things like that.
Following his coverage of the meeting,
The first was held by Councillor Harris, and that is the Allendale MTSA Community Planning Permit System. So you can put the item on the floor, and then you can speak to it and make any amendments that you wish.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'll put the item on the floor as printed, and first have a few questions. And before I begin, I just wanted to know, and I think I did this earlier when we did it at the public meeting, but this has been a really a positive public process. It's where municipal government really shines, I think. And early on when this was presented, you were there, Mayor Nuttall, in meetings in here at City Hall with members of the planning staff and members of the community, and it's really evolved quite wonderfully. So Doesn't mean we're perfectly aligned, but we're pretty close. So I really appreciate that. And tonight, that's where my questions lie tonight is, and actually Deputy Mayor Thomson, we had a community meeting where you came. So thank you for that as well, with some members of the community. So where we are really, and I've had a chance to speak to residents and planning staff today as well, is issue of frontage and frontage as it relates to the heritage areas. And, there's been some question about the distance, right? So how many meters should the setback be? So just wanted to, through you, Mayor Nuttall, just to ask Ms. Banfield, where we are today is, again, we have it looks like a really great community planning permit system agreement with this one area that we're not quite aligned on close, but maybe we can get some clarity on. We had a heritage experts to help us with this process, and maybe you can talk about that. But the concern or the pros and cons of the setbacks that have been recommended at the I think it's 8 to 11, and from what was 4.5 to 5. So if you can give us the pros and cons and what the intention is with the setbacks and how that advantages heritage as explained by the heritage experts, that would be very helpful. So thank you.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harris, thank you so much for the question. And you're right, we're down to what I would say is one technical issue as it relates to a front yard setback. So that is the distance from the road to where a new building would be constructed. As drafted, the community planning permit system has 2 ranges of setbacks depending on how deep the lot is. So that is, if it's greater than 30 meters, it would be an 8 meter minimum to an 11 meter maximum. And if it's less than 30 meters, it would be 5 meter minimum to an 11 meter maximum. The feedback that we're getting from the community is that it should be either 4.5 or 5 meters, regardless of the depth of the lot. So the difference is, and I just want to point out a couple of things. So one, all of these distances that we're talking about could allow for a porch to encroach up to 1.5 meters into that. And at the same token, because of the way the community planning permit system is structured, there is the ability for a variation of about 20% to both of those numbers. So you could be 20% smaller or 20% larger. From a staff perspective, the part that we're looking at is we would want, if possible, to allow for a new structure, especially on some of these deeper lots, to be either in line or behind some of the existing structures, which would then mean that a property couldn't necessarily be, like a new structure couldn't be constructed in front of an existing structure. So that is one part of where staff is coming from. The other piece as well is a big part of the community planning permit system and the engagement that we've heard is also about protecting mature trees in the area, a lot of which are along the street frontage. And so the idea of the bigger setback, at least that bigger setback range, was also to provide some additional room, if you will, to preserve some of those mature trees. So from a staff perspective, that's the piece. In terms of what we're hearing from the community, there's that element of, if a building is closer, perhaps a new building, they would want to be closer to them and people could sit on their porch and chit chat and those sorts of things. So I think that's where we're hearing about why potentially having a shorter setback might work. In terms of how we've worked with the consultants and the experts on this project team, the recommendations to council were developed on a comprehensive neighborhood-wide analysis, not only from a design perspective, but also from a heritage professional perspective. And they basically went street by street, kind of mapping the existing structures, and really the intent was to ensure that new development or infill development really is set back from that established streetscape. Larger lots would protect some of those existing trees. So from that perspective, that's why we have the different variations based on the depth of the lot, and that is the intent of that variation in front yard setbacks.
Great, thank you, and follow up through you, Mayor Nuttall. Thank you, Ms. Banfield. One of the other things that we talked about was the potential concern that if there was a larger setback, there could be the possibility of a kind of blocking of or a continuous section of driveways that kind of created a frontage of driveways. I wonder if you could speak to that possibility, or what provisions would kind of prevent that possibility of driveways being the frontage.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harris, thank you for the question. So ultimately, in most cases across the city, one property gets one driveway. So regardless of how many units, obviously multi-residential units don't all have their own driveway, right? So there's that one perspective that, you know, there will be the single driveway. As well, there are provisions in the community planning permit system that limit the amount that a frontage can be paved. So that is the piece, and that's a product of the width of the lot, not the depth of the front yard.
Thank you. Maybe one other question for you again, Mayor Nuttall, and you might not know this, but I'm just curious. I know there was reference to another positive community consultation 2516, where there was a planning department and members of the Elton Neighborhood Association worked together to kind of, you know, set some of these thoughts about setbacks. Am I correct that that didn't include, or did it include a heritage expert involved to help with that consultation, or is that a staff community effort?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harris, are you talking about the heritage, like the Allendale neighborhood study? Is that the one that you're referring to?
Yes, thank you, yeah.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harris. So I was not at the city at that time, but it's my understanding that it was actually a very robust study with led by Mayor Lehman at the time, although I think he was Councillor Lehman at the time. So it was my understanding that it was a combination with the community, with council, as well as professionals as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think, you know, we sit here with, and I do also recognize that one of the key elements and opportunities in the CPPS was to increase tree preservation. So, you know, in that sense of the setbacks being aligned to that, and also the sensitivity to make sure we have really well-designed, livable neighborhoods that both support new development, but also feature the heritage. We seem to have this little slight discomfort with where we're at, but I thank you for that. I think I'll leave it at that, but thank you for the feedback and support.
Councillor Harvey, you're next, and then Councillor Morales is right after.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Just a point of clarification with respect to the driveways, because I know, well, actually you attended with a couple of staff because there was a few complaints in my ward. So I just want a little bit of clarification to make sure that the response is actually what I understand it to be from our meeting there several months ago. Although the width in per se is part of it, that, however, when we examined how it was being measured, it also included the piece of land that would go down the side of the house. So although it was 60%, it was 60% of the entire frontage, not 60% of the true width of the front of the lot. So I just want, if we can get some clarification on that, or if the intent is different in the Allendale area.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey. So there's a couple of aspects. There's what you can actually have as hard surface and what you can actually park on. And so there is an element of, there is a bit of a differentiation in terms of what could actually look like it's paved versus what you can actually park on. So what you can actually park on is 60% of the front yard, which is the, again, which is the width and 60% of the width of the frontage. And that's what's in the community planning permit system. Across the city, it does vary a little bit, but that's kind of where the difference is.
Just a follow-up if I could, because the exact situation that we had that meeting about in my ward, it was an entirely paved surface that we were dealing with, and it exceeded 60% of the width of the lot. However, the way it was measured by staff was inclusive of the space that also went down the side of the house as far as where the fence and the gate started, which when you look at the overall square footage, it was within the 60%, but it actually was wider than 60% of the frontage of the lot, and it was a fully paved area. So that's why I'm having difficulty in understanding the responses, because it seems like it's a little bit different than what was spoken of that day when we met at my ward.
So through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey. So it is, as I said, it's the combination of there is what you can pave, like what can be paved versus what you can park a car on. I think that's the separation thing. You can pave through, like in between your houses and those sorts of, like that can be a hard surface, but you can't park your car there. I think that's the.
So just as a follow-up then, so you're telling me that somebody could decide that they don't want grass anywhere at the frontage of their yard, and they could pave the entire thing, however, they can only park on 60% of it?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey, that's correct.
Okay, I think this will be something that we need to address in the future, because I couldn't fathom that our city could get covered with asphalt all over the front lawns of people's homes, especially when you consider accessory dwellings and such forth that have been approved recently. So I'll leave it at that and we can take it offline. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Harvey. I think that when you see, I can think of an example on Bruce Crescent where there's interlock across the entire front. But what happens is eventually bylaw understands what's changed there and sees vehicles parking in places they shouldn't be. And then you see planters go on top of those services to show that they won't be used for parking anymore. And so that's traditionally what we've seen happen across the city when that happens. But the answer is 100% yes. You're essentially in control of your own space.
Thank you for that. I'll just say that's not what's happening in my area, and as a result, I'm getting a number of complaints, and I'll just leave it at that because we could be sucking up a lot of time here tonight on this one. Sure. Thank you.
Councilor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I totally understand how residents can see this and be confused. This is the Allendale area only, for the plan permit system. So, quick question to staff. The proposed setback does not include the city right of way. Now, I'm going to clarify what I mean by that. There is the legal required setback. Then there's that usually 1 to 2 meters, sometimes slightly more, of no man's land where like residents have to maintain it, but it's technically the city's. And so that right of way, so that setback that you outlined is in addition to the right of way space. So what I'll call the effective setback, difference between interest rates and effective interest rates, the effective setback is your proposed setback plus either 1 or 2 meters. Is that a correct interpretation, Ms. Banfield?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councilor Morales, correct. It would be from the front lot line.
Okay. And I want to distinguish that because that makes it, on 5 meters, an extra 2 meters makes a big difference. That's extra 40%. So I guess now this is more of the form of a question, of a comment. A setback does not make a heritage neighborhood. It's really the features of the neighborhood that make the neighborhood. I can see actually both sides on this. It was kind of interesting because initially I went, really? The heritage kind of passionate people are asking for less of a setback. And so I can see how more of a setback does protect heritage trees and protects kind of the existing thing in the area. I could also see how having a reduced setback actually brings the people, the activation, and it activates the streetscape to make it a more heritage walkable neighborhood. Just the way if you go into neighborhoods in Leaside, in Long Branch, in Toronto, you have houses closer to the road. You have less of these giant driveways, length, not necessarily width. That is a very important issue, Councilor Harvey, though, but that's different. But and I don't know enough about it. But if you have it closer to the building, to the street, you activate that streetscape. You get those porches where people want to build the porches out instead of like, no, I'm going to take my money and build a back porch. So I can actually see the benefits of a more heritage-like neighborhood with a lower setback. So anyways, this issue is interesting because maybe the comments from residents is opposite to what I expected. And the approach from staff is opposite to what I expected. So I guess I'll leave it where a setback does not make a heritage neighborhood, in my perspective. People are entitled to their own perspectives, and also knowing that whatever number we arrive at, it's going to be a +1 or +2 meters for an effective setback. And that is very important to take account, that those meters of right of way.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't have any other hands up for questions or comments, so I'm going to call the vote on the matter. So all those in favor? And it carries. So we will move on to the next item before us, which is Deputy Mayor Thomson, 6.1.2.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'll put the motion on the floor as printed, and I have an amendment. That staff be authorized to implement a Lakehead students semester transit pass at a rate of $150 per semester, and that it be valid for students attending Barrie's Lakehead University STEM Hub, and that the passes be available for the fall 2026, winter 2027, and summer of 2027 semesters. And I can speak to that.
Floor is yours, sir.
So we brought forward a motion for rec passes, and then dealing with staff and talking with them, and kind of like what we do with Georgian, was giving them the opportunity to have I believe it's called the U Pass with the college. But unfortunately, just by timing, the only way a student union can vote in a pass is have a referendum, and their earliest referendum would be in 2027, which would allow them to take on the same UPass system as Georgian. So this allows them to get familiar with our transit system. It increases ridership. It alleviates traffic on roads. And it's a little bit more than the UPass. So it's encouraging them, when they do have the referendum, that they could get a reduction by voting it in. And it actually helps by ridership with the fuel, the federal gas tax. Yeah. So that's why the amendment's on the floor.
Any questions or comments for Deputy Mayor Thomson? You can ask questions, staff, for sure. Councillor Negussi.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. This appears to be a positive partnership between both to the city and Lakehead University, but question to staff, are there any additional opportunities in the future to expand collaboration with the university in the area such as community programming, student engagement, research, or volunteer initiatives? I'm just curious if there's any. Okay.
Through Mayor Nuttall to Councillor Negussi. What I can say is we have a real strong partnership with Georgian College already, with some of probably what you're talking about, from engagement exercises and education exercises. We send staff there quite a bit to, promote the UPass, promote our service, things like that. In the past, we actually have worked on them with other areas, parking revenue and things like that with our IT departments, in terms of some of the research they've helped us with other areas, not necessarily specifically with transit, but we have seen that. And we're hoping to have that same relationship with Lakehead, obviously. And as we work through, this and hopefully a UPass, and then other opportunities to align our service with them.
Good. Thank you. Great motion. I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Negussi. I'm going to Councillor Reitman now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm very supportive of this initiative as well. And just maybe an answer to Councillor Negussi's question. It's been, I'm chair of the Town and Gown Committee, and it's been certainly a subject of the Town and Gown Committee as well. And we have put forward to our committees that Lakehead also be included in the Town and Gown representation, because there's a lot of crossover, and we're hoping very much that we will be able to develop a great relationship between the city and Lakehead students through Town and Gown, as we have with Georgian College as well.
Yeah, great point. And Madam Clerk, could you please put into your reminders for the constitution of future committees after the election, that be considered as one of the constitutional changes, if it hasn't been already?
Mr. Mayor, I think that there's a recommendation coming forward from Town and Gown to council to do exactly that.
Even better.
And I might just say, I agree, it's even better. I might say that they've also asked a representative from the BIA to be included, because I think that's a really important piece of it.
Yeah. Amazing. I'm seeing no other hands, so we're going to vote on the amendment. All those in favor? It carries on the main motion as amended. Any questions or comments? I'm seeing none. All those in favor? And it's approved as amended. So we're going to move on to our next item. Give me a mo. Which is the 7.4 spring water cross-border servicing agreement. Deputy Mayor Thomson, I believe that was you as well.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'll put the motion on the floor as printed, and that the draft agreement identified in paragraph 1 of staff report CAO-002-2026 be amended to reference changed identified in memorandum dated June 10th, 2026 from Ms. Kay Oakley regarding cross-border servicing agreements. And I won't speak to this. If anybody has any questions of clarity, I would direct them to Ms. Oakley, as this is a very technical about flows and all that, and I'm not qualified.
In the minutes, the deputy mayor doesn't want to answer questions about toilets is actually what's happening here. Any questions or comments from members of council, or members of committee, sorry. I'm seeing none. In regards to the amendment, all those in favor? It carries on the main motion. Any questions or comments? I'm seeing none. All those in favor as amended? And it's approved. Thank you. We are going to the development charge, DMT, that's Deputy Mayor Thomson in my notes for the record. 7.17 development charge waiver pilot program update. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. And I'll put the motion on the floor as printed. And I have an amendment to add to the following paragraph 2. That in light of the participation in the first round of DC waiver program established through Council Motion 25G 197 adopted August 13, 2025, and updated by a mayoral direction MIR 009-25 dated September 25th, 2025, a second intake period be open to allow for applications to be considered that may have not been able to meet the original timelines subjected to the following. 1, building permit application must be received by the city no later than July 15th, 2026, and building activity must commence by no later than October 31st, 2026. 3, for affordable ownership projects, a minimum of 60% of the units must be sold at or below the affordable ownership purchase price secured through an agreement with the city. And 4, that staff investigate and report back prior to summer recess concerning potential funding opportunities through the Canadian Ontario Development Charge Reduction Program. And I can speak to this.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. As people are aware that we put forward a motion, and I believe it started at 55 or 50 million, and we had increased it to 80 million for the DC waiver to spur on new development. And we had a lot of takers at first, and then some of the applicants were unable to meet the criteria of the program. So the ones that did, that are well on their way in construction, but there are several, I believe it's 4 or 5, that were just right at the finish line, but for some unforeseen reasons, some were tenant issues, some were Electra, some were some engineering back and forth. I just didn't want to lose the opportunity for the affordable housing. And since we're doing a second call with the remaining money that was left over, so it's no added financial implications. It was already slated for. Mayor Nuttall has always spoke through this term about the transition of his life being part of ownership. So adding the affordability of ownership part of the program at 60% is a game changer. I believe that it's going to give people opportunity to get into the market where was never an opportunity. And we're going to get much needed units. So, and then the last point is that I believe it was Tuesday that there was a provincial announcement, or Monday. Anyway, Monday, I believe it was, yes, today's Wednesday. So just in light of that, we're waiting on all the regulations to have staff investigate and see, what opportunities are for the city, as staff always does. But it would be nice to have something like that in case there's another opportunity for another program based on this. So that's basically my amendment.
Over to Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for bringing this forward. I was actually surprised that there wasn't a larger uptick when you consider 80 million was available and just shy of half of that was actually granted. So like you had said, there's no actual change in the funding. It's just giving more opportunities to be able to use up the 44 million and change that is still available, and especially having the additional clause with the affordable piece definitely is hitting the mark, I think, where we really need to push to get that piece moving forward. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Any other questions or comments from, I'll start with Councillor Courser, then Councillor Kugel.
Thank you. I'm really supportive of this. This is fantastic. Actually, it's funny because I was planning on bringing something forward myself to this, but I was wondering if the amendment was, the mover of the amendment was considering rental units at all, or just purchase?
Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Courser. So the original program in motion 25G 197 was, I believe it was 20% affordable, 5 stories, purpose-built rental. So that will continue. And then the only added to this go round is paragraph 3 with the affordable ownership of a minimum of 60%. So the bulk, or the ones in the first uptake, were all rentals, I believe, purpose-built rentals. And then the ones that were very close to the finish line that hopefully reapply and fulfill their obligations and get it built will be rental. So I would say the bulk of the money that's being uptake is by purpose-built rentals.
Yeah, Councillor Courser, just to add on to Deputy Mayor Thomson there. So the 1,900, I think it was 36, I'm going on memory, units. Of those 1,936 units, and we were together doing the YYZ, don't call it YYZ, YYZ. Yeah, no, I got corrected, I remember. The announcements, over 1,000 of those are proceeding as per the report. There's about 880, something like that, 870, that aren't proceeding for 2 reasons. One is that there were obstacles to get around to get to the point where they can start building. Like they signed on in November, December for the purpose-built rental, but didn't meet the May 31st deadline because of whatever obstacles that the Deputy Mayor has already outlined. One of the buildings was because it was a for sale building. I don't know what you call it. For sale is what was that the right word? Ownership, thank you, building rather than a purpose-built rental building. What was unique about that is they're talking about 66, 65% of the building being under the affordability staple provided by CMHC and the Minister of Municipal Affairs for Ontario. And the purpose-built rentals are only 20%. And so I think council should recognize the deputy mayor's, and I fully support this, but the deputy mayor's motion is giving a specific stream to ownership that was not there before, and at the same time continuing with all of the rental units to go ahead. The result of that is we'll be somewhere in the neighborhood. There's another bunch of units over in Councillor Morales' ward, on Big Bay Point and Ashford. Midnight Group that are coming forward. So all this put together, you're like over 800 affordable units under construction at one time in the city of Barrie, if this motion passes.
Just one more question, just more like a check mark, is that I'm assuming, hopefully, that as this moves forward, there will be, with the purpose-built rental, it will be necessary for those rental units to be held to affordable for a length of time. That's correct. There's nothing that changes on that.
25 years, as I'm going on memory.
Yeah.
And not only held for 25 years for affordable housing, but only Barrie residents, existing Barrie residents, can qualify for the units that are part of the rent geared to income program, or not rent geared to income, sorry, but the affordable housing program.
Yeah.
Purpose-built
Okay,
rental.
yes, yeah, I knew that, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Nuttall. I might just build on that and redirect this question to Ms. Banfield, if I may. When we talked about the 25 years, I believe we had conversations about this in the past about evergreening. So if I was someone that came to the table and made a commitment to this, but then I sold the property, does the condition of the 60% hold true as it changes hands before those units are sold?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kungle. So any property that is rental, absolutely, there's an agreement registered on title, and there's default clauses in that agreement to maintain the affordability for the 25-year period.
That's great, thank you. And then separately, how do we view building activity? So I know we've got this concierge process. I'm looking at the timelines on here. So from permit to building activity, what qualifies as activity?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kungle. For the definition of this program, staff suggested that building activity was defined as having your first footing and foundation inspection done through your building permit.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess my overall question, and maybe I'll start with you, Ms. Banfield, if that's okay, and then I'll redirect. Are you able to identify where the timelines come from? So I'm looking at the July 15th around permit received, which is just 5 weeks away, and then activity by October 31st, which is maybe a 3.5-month window. Are those artifacts of something? What are those timelines tied to, or is it better to redirect to you, Deputy Mayor? Okay.
So, thank you, through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kungle. So the July 15th is pertaining to the provincial announcement.
Okay.
So we were trying to tie it into something like that in case there's more of an announcement from the Ontario Canadian development charge reduction, sorry. So that was the date we picked there to have everything kind of bundled together. And then understanding that the majority of the people who signed this in December that didn't meet the deadline, they're well on their way. So they're going to need to re-sign. So it's fully attainable, and it's not going to be an issue going forward for these people. And if they are, then you can only walk the horse to water so many times. You can't make it drink. So we're giving them all the opportunity. And if you go across Ontario, we're leading the way in development by, timelines with staff, turnarounds. We're doing everything to create the environment to build. It's now in their court. So that's where the timelines come from.
And I'm trying to just appreciate the strings attached to these formal boundaries around timelines. So maybe I'll get my permit renewed in time, but around building activity and other conditions, if you formally don't meet that threshold by the 31st, what's the consequence of that? You lose access to all the funding, or you kind of taxed on it?
You use it or lose it.
Okay.
You have to have, I believe the verbiage is, we have to have the foundation inspection booked by the 31st of October. And let's be honest, if it's not booked by the 31st of October, if we you know, you project 2 weeks beyond that, it's the same as 2025, 26. Like there's snow on the ground and things are not happening anyway. So I think that, you know, the council of the day in the future will have to estimate based on the results, whether to continue at that point or to go a different direction. So I think that's it.
I'm not opposed to this, just looking at understanding and appreciating as we move into, I think you referred to earlier, lame duck, if there's any conditions on this that would have to kick back to council, and or if it did, then making sure that that was under the conditions of any authority that we are deferring to staff.
I think the first meeting is a lot sooner after the election than previous, as I recall. Madam Clerk, it's in November.
Yes.
And so the October 31st deadline, I think that that falls right in line. We have till the 21st of August, I understand. And so I think there's tons of time built in
For a special meeting.
at this point. Yeah.
Okay.
Really, this isn't a city thing. If you speak to those who've come forward, in fact, I think there were stories written about it. The staff, our public servants have been serving, right? They've been delivering on timelines. They've been speeding things up. I'm paraphrasing, but you know, one of the quotes was like, if every municipality was doing what Barrie's doing in terms of the timelines of our staff turnarounds, then they would be building all over the GTA. They're only building in Barrie. And I know we like to take credit for that because that's what we do, but that's them who've done that. So I think we've done everything we can from a political perspective. I think our public servants certainly have bought into that vision very well. At some point, it's actually just the developer and the builder. And, you know, that point got moved from May 31st to October 31st. And I wish people gave me as much leniency as we're giving them. So.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Negussi?
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thomson. I support this amendment, but I have a quick question to staff, probably to Ms. Banfield. Ms. Banfield, looking ahead, how does the staff, your team, see this program influencing future housing development in Barrie, particularly in terms of attracting, you know, new developers or encouraging more innovative housing design and delivery models? Can you just give us a little bit?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Negussi, thanks for the question. So ultimately, the development community continues to say they want certainty in terms of their process, and they want to know what to expect, and they want to be our partners. And so I think this is a great example of the city coming to the table, not only at the council level, mayor and council level, but at the staff level. And you know, the people that have participated in the program are doing their part, and a few of them ran into some roadblocks that that council is, you know, going to give them a little bit more time to kind of work through them. So I think it just shows that the city of Barrie, not only council and the mayor, but staff are here to be their partners and to collaborate and to get things done. And I think that's appreciated by all levels of government and the development community.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Nuttall.
Thank you. One more question from Councillor Corser.
Yes, thank you. I almost forgot to ask this as it was sent to me through a resident. Through you, Mayor Nuttall, I don't know if this would be Ms. Smith or Ms. Banfield. When development charges are waived, can staff explain in plain language where the money comes from for the growth-related infrastructure those charges would normally help fund? Oh.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Corser. Generally, when development charges are waived, the municipality makes itself whole through other source funding. That can come from reserves, it can come from government grants, it can come from various areas.
Okay, so would that be something that would be led back to the tax base?
It could come back to the tax base.
Okay,
but it doesn't have to come back to the tax base.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Morales.
Quickly, Mayor Nuttall, I can't just leave that one hanging. Ms. Banfield, would it be fair to say the following comment? Not having a development occur of density of more than single detached homes, so having it not go through, and not getting both the development charges and the tax revenues, but I'll focus on development charges. Mayor Nuttall always emphasizes that those are tax revenues that will occur in perpetuity, but not getting them, if the development stalls, actually is a greater cost to the municipality than waiving some, partial, or all of the development charges for a piece of land that would otherwise contribute more units.
I think I'm actually just going to step in on that because I think, so I think the business case that you're talking about is accurate on a case-by-case basis and inaccurate on a case-by-case basis. There are occurrences where if we waive DCs, it could have severe implications for the city. And there are cases where we can waive DCs completely and have no implications except for the cost of the water and wastewater at the plants, okay? I think based on the projects that we're talking about, the majority is falling into the prior, which is not a heavy impact on the tax base. But I wouldn't want to say that every time we waive development charges, there's no impact, because I don't think that's necessarily the case. We designed this for over 5 stories, density, because that's where we benefit the most in the taxation side, to your point.
Correct, and because it's a unique program, it's not, my suggestion wasn't that it's a blanket suggestion.
Yeah. And so, like, the reason it was designed that way by council is because we wanted to mitigate the DC waiver. I think it's also important when we put this program together, and I was going to say this before, but I wanted to wait till after you, Councilor Morales. When we put this program together, it's important to recognize that we said that in the actual approval by council that the DC account would be made whole by, I think it was 50% of the taxation that was raised through the program itself going back into the DC account. So if you pick a YYZ, I think there's 300 units or so between their 2 developments. We now have 300 units of new taxation. That's going to bring in a lot of taxation, and it's going to take us 40 or 50 years, I believe was the number, to make ourselves whole on that, but it'll happen year over year. At this point, if we hadn't done anything, there would be nothing happening. And there's a direct, I think we can see a cause and effect here, I'm using your verbiage, which is we put a program into place, it got a lot of pickup, if you will, and our April numbers for home building are record levels. And so clearly the idea and staff's implementation of the idea has resulted in economic activity that would not have happened.
Exactly. And just to summarize to your point, is again, it's very specific, doesn't apply to everything. That's why we targeted the way we did. In my perspective, the most expensive development charge waiver is for the unit that doesn't get built in these unique circumstances. So thank you for that clarity. I think it was important to have that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of committee? Seeing none, I know I've spoken kind of, but I just there's 2 things I want to highlight in this. One is this, that we're putting together, through this approval, there's a 25-year program for each of the buildings once they are built and they start providing housing. So that's, call it 27 to 28 years from now, right? And I think what I've learned through this process so far is that this strategy actually works. And I don't want to do this tonight, so I'm not going to ask for it to be done tonight. But I do at some point want our staff to take a look at how we would create an annual program for a much smaller amount of money. We're going to use 60 million or 57 million or something like that on this to create this many units, but I think that there's an opportunity to have a building a year go forward under this program and create affordable housing units consistently year over year going forward. The reason that we're in this position is because that was never done. The reason we're in this position is because it was 1993 and then 2000 and 26, the years where you saw real affordable housing projects move forward in terms of size, right? And so for me, I think going forward, that's a thing that the city needs to grapple with, the finance team in our city needs to grapple with, the planning team in our city needs to grapple with, and come back with a program that works. And this is to my second point, which is this is a really cheap program for affordable housing. Like, it is very cheap. It's like, it's easy for you to say, Alex, we're waiving $60 million in DCs when everybody's actually at the finish line. 100%. We're putting $220 million into affordable housing units at Rose Street. And we're receiving a third of the number, or maybe a half of the number that we are seeing through this program. And so when you look at this from a unit basis, per unit cost of getting affordable housing to market, it is incredible, incredible. Final on this is that I would like our staff, after this is done, to work with the county to see if there's opportunities from these builders to include some RGIs inside of the affordable housing. This is not one size fits all, and I'm not talking about the size of the unit, I'm talking about the size of the rent check or payment. And I think there's opportunities to stack municipal, provincial, and county dollars to get into a more deeply affordable area. So those are kind of my thoughts on the program itself. I really hope all of council supports this. When you look at the amount of tradespeople no longer working on condos and apartment buildings in Toronto at this point who live in our city, this helps them go to work every day. This is not just about housing, it's also about jobs. And I see a lot of cranes and a lot of workers right now in the city of Barrie, and 2/3 of them haven't even started yet. So this is not just about the housing, folks. It is also about ensuring that those jobs are available in our community. So I'll call the vote on Deputy Mayor Thomson's amendment, and then we'll go from there. So all those in favor of the amendment? It's approved. On the main motion, are there any other questions or comments? I'm seeing none. All those in favor? It's approved. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Council.
For Simcoe Community Media, I am Deepak Bidwai. This story was supported by the Local Journalism Initiative.